Hello, welcome to the Living on the Verge podcast. It's Virginia, and today we're going to be talking Real Housewives of Atlanta and Love Hotel. Real Housewives of Atlanta, episode 13, starts off with Shamia and her daughter Shia loading the truck with essentials for relief to Grenada before ahead of their trip. That's where they're heading for their cast trip. And all of the girls show up with their variation of donations or send them ahead if they don't go. And then Britt shows up with this big old box and she says, here's what she has. It was all she could carry, but she has a lot of other stuff that is going to be dropped off later. And Shamia asks when later is because the truck is leaving in an hour. And so Britt tells us that it was last minute and then she leaves. And after she leaves, the girls open the box and they unearth 2 packs of toilet paper and 1 box of tissue. Do we think this was production? Like, first of all, I don't think she would have walked up with that big old box. And, she probably, I think they're setting her up a little bit. I'm all for it because she's not my favorite. And in my opinion, this is probably it for Britt. Although, to be fair, we are all talking about her. So maybe she's good for the show and they'll bring her back. I honestly hope not because I just don't like the way she moves. But I'm not casting the show, so nobody asked me. Well, we then see Drew and Porsha finally meet and we're hoping for some resolution. They have tea together and Porsha thinks it's a good idea to clear the air before Grenada, and Drew thinks they should have done it long before. Well, I like that Porsha was smart enough to know herself, and she said she needed her time, that she does not communicate well when she is upset. That was really self aware, and I was really proud of her because it's true. If you're not ready, it's not going to go well. Well, this doesn't go well either. They appear like they're going to make up, but then it goes left as usual because Porsha says something about who Drew might be dating that sets her off, meaning black. And Drew, because of the divorce, wants nothing to do with any names of anybody she might be dating. And she gets very offended and then shoots back with a name that is bleeped out. And the speculation is that that name is Future and that that's who Porsha is allegedly messing with. And anyway, both of them get very, very upset, very heated. And next thing you know, Drew says that the problem is that Porsha is going through a divorce and she's bringing smoke to Drew that's not hers to have. I don't disagree, but it gets really ugly and then Porsha walks out and Drew makes a couple of nasty comments. I mean, geez. She says, I'm starting to understand why Simon is divorcing you and why Shamia wants to leave you. Well, you know that that's not going to fare well when that gets watched back. So we'll see what happens. It was supposed to go well and it didn't. Next thing we have Kelli, and she's talking to Uncle Lamont, which is what the kids call him, but he's really her manager. And he said that he had tried to talk to Mark about trying to mend the relationship for the sake of the kids and maybe, spending some more time. And that Mark told him that he wanted nothing to do with it. And Kelli just gets really emotional and tells us that he ain't got to do right by me, but you got to do right by them. And that's rough. It's hard to be one parent in a situation. I can't imagine what it's like to not have somebody else to turn to for parenting. I know people close to me that have raised their children all on their own, and it takes a special kind of a super person to do that. So I don't wish what Kelli's going through on anyone. And it is sad, because at the end of the day, it's the kids who end up suffering the most. Well, let's cheer things up a little bit. We're heading to Grenada, and the girls meet at the airport. Angela meets Phaedra for the first time, and she says even though she's heard a lot about her, she's going to give her a chance because she thought she was really cool. Meanwhile, in confessionals, Phaedra immediately shades Angela by saying she's the oldest looking young woman she's ever met. Well, the girls all get on board the plane and everybody swears they want no drama. Well, they pretty much get to Grenada uneventfully. And as soon as they arrive, Shamia realizes that her baggage got left behind in Atlanta. Oh, man. So apparently she has only one change of underwear until tomorrow. However, later on in the episode, we see her in another outfit, and she does tell us that she had a couple of outfits in her carry-on bag. Another endorsement for putting a couple of outfits in your carry-on bag. Put a pair of PJs, a swimsuit, a change of shoes, and a couple of outfits that are neutral, and it could save a vacation because you just never know when that's going to happen. It's happened to me on the way home that my luggage has been misplaced, but never on the way there. So I don't think that that would be fun. Chapter 1 is supposed to be the ladies' reset, and their destination for such is the Point Petite Kelli in Grenada. They're greeted by dancers and music and welcome beverages, and it's a beautiful time. Everybody's having a fun afternoon, and then the manager announces that they'll be sharing suites. Obviously, Shamia and Kelli, who are the hostesses, will be rooming together. But then we have Britt rooming with Phaedra, Angela with Porsha, and Cynthia with Drew. Cynthia and Drew, sadly, got the only room that had one large bed and then 2 twin beds in the other room. So at the end of the day, Cynthia ended up getting the large bed, but not before losing to Drew in an arm wrestling battle, and then Drew feeling bad and giving it to her anyway. Well, we see Chef Raquel. This is a gentleman who is going to serve as the chef for that evening and the following morning. So Porsha starts chatting with him and asks if he knows how to make pepper sauce. And I guess that's her food flirting love language. I'm not sure, but it does get very flirtatious. And it ends with her grabbing a little snack and giving him a hug and almost even a little kiss. And as she walks around away, she says she'll do some things for a chicken wing. Well, I guess so. Okay. Cynthia then tells us that she has a younger boyfriend who she refers to as Amsterdam. And we all know, we've been hearing about Amsterdam if you listen to their podcast. And her thing is that she doesn't really care if their relationship is out, but she doesn't want it to be on social media. She's not going to go like, Instagram official, because she just doesn't think that it's ever good for a relationship. And I'm not sure that I don't agree with her. Well, who Amsterdam is Prince, who is a R&B artist from Amsterdam. The details of their relationship became public when Cynthia invited him to an event to support her podcast co-host Crystal Minkoff of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, former housewife, just a couple of months ago. So now we all know who Amsterdam is, but it's funny, she still calls him that, like even on her podcast to date. So Britt points out to Phaedra that there's some black man in the window showing his dangling, meaning he's fully naked. Phaedra says she wants to see it. Okay, well, I guess when in Grenada. Then the girls get changed for dinner, and Phaedra comes out with her Phaedra-isms. I just think she's so funny. She says somebody asks her how the funeral business is going, and she says, it's going great. People are just dying to meet Jesus. Ha ha ha. At dinner, Angela announces that it's her 8th wedding anniversary, and she's not with her husband. And then Kelli pipes up and says that she wants to see a reset, especially with Shamia and Drew. Well, Shamiya is still upset about the fact that Drew's posting on social media instead of talking to her. And then it just goes on and on and on. And then Cynthia finally interrupts Shamia and tells her to let Drew speak. But the first thing Drew says is, so hit dog gonna holler. As usual, things start to head south, and these girls are pissed off because their conversations aren't being kept private. And Shamia's mad because Drew's doubling down with the name calling. And Phaedra makes the best point of all.
But we do take offense if we're having an intimate conversation with you that you run and tell it back.
Okay, let's be very clear. Did you really think you were having a intimate conversation with Shamia about her best friend?
That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, who's bringing
Porsha, nobody is prying into your friendship.
Well, yes, you are, Miss Angela. You are definitely prying into the relationship between Shamia and Drew, trying to facilitate, I don't know, I guess you want Shamia to stand up for herself. That must be what this is all about. Kelli points out to us that she feels everyone except for Cynthia at the table has a problem with Drew. And everybody has to agree with that because it's the truth. Everybody's been beefing with Drew pretty much all season. So 1 second, we have Porsha apologizing to Drew for the way she came at her. And then they get into a conversation about Porsha saying that Drew is dating Black. And then Drew was very triggered by that. And then, as usual, things start to heat up. Well, Porsha says she's just done talking about it.
I want to stop talking to Drew about this. I literally want her to marry Dennis and do Pilar's baby hair. It is just so misunderstood. I'm literally done. All right, I got my rose.
And things weren't off the rails enough. Britt needs to check in with, her 2 cents. She had to have her poignant moment. Let's listen to it.
Can I speak? I've been wanting to speak. Okay, so while we all here speaking on things that we feel may be inappropriate with ex-husbands or baby daddies, I just personally want to say to you, Phaedra, at my event, Apollo and his wife were invited through my husband. I don't know Apollo. I've never had a relationship with him. There was no malicious intent.
I'm not sure why Britt is bringing up Apollo, honey. That is not my husband. He is married to somebody else, so I could care less. We ain't got no problem.
Yeah, okay, so that's all. So,
No girl, give me the
I just, don't tell me.
Britt, read the room. Ain't nobody talking about that. But we are still talking about the fact that we all left your event hungry.
Way to end the episode, as per usual, with a nice little dose of shade. And we'll see what happens. There seemed to have been a little bit of resolve among the girls. And, at least they were able to draw some boundaries. Well, let's see if it lasts for the renew portion of their trip next week. I'll be here to cover it for you. Let's move on to the Love Hotel episode 6. I'm really loving this show. I find it really enjoyable to watch. So sometimes I have to watch these shows twice for the podcast. I try to do it one time for enjoyment and then kind of just, pick and choose what I think is notable. And then the second time I watch it for the podcast and for, to take notes and such. I have so much fun watching this both times that sometimes I forget to take notes the second time. I don't know if it's the setting. I'm a sucker for like a beach resort, or if it's just the group of people that they've gotten together, or like I've said before, the demographic, or maybe it's just I was, itching for a change. Anyway, whatever it is, I want to have more of it. I want to keep love hoteling. So let's get into episode 6. It starts off with Mitch, Giselle, and Theo chatting. And Mitch asked what Giselle has learned about, everything so far in the experience. And she tells us, a few things. But then Theo chimes in and tells us that he's been doing his research. Even though he has not dated a Black woman, his research shows that the lowest divorce rate is amongst Black women married to white men. Giselle was liking the fact that he did his research.
Interesting thing they said, Black women and white men have the least likely, have the lowest divorce rate.
Really?
Yes. Is that right?
Theo said, I'm here to stay. I like Giselle. She didn't ask me a question about dating Black women. I said no. Have either one of you dated a Black woman?
Mm-hmm. No.
So what does the man do? He does research. Yes. Give me some statistics. How can you not love this guy?
Theo's really into her, and I'm loving it. I think he's a smart gentleman. I kind of prefer her with Phil, but we'll see what happens. So Joel gathers the group and tells them that he's sending them on a boat excursion. And then the girls are asked to pick a date right then and there. So Giselle picks Theo, and then Shannon sticks with Earl. Ashley takes Ralph because he hadn't been on a date so far. And Luann picks Mark. Mark runs over and jumps on her, and Luann's kicking her leg up, and they're having this funny, odd, weird moment for everybody else to watch. But thankfully, it didn't go on for long. And next thing you know, everybody's on the boat. They're having drinks. I'm still not understanding the tequila and Diet Coke thing, but apparently that's Shannon's new drink. And so then they anchor and they start dancing, and Shannon is sitting there watching as Earl is dancing with his shirt unbuttoned. Not only does she not want to dance, but she's pretty mortified that his shirt is unbuttoned. It really bothers her.
Okay, I'm not dancing.
Why is Earl walking around with his shirt unbuttoned? I don't know. Call me an asshole. I was raised proper. Like, you don't do that. Just button up your shirt. Yeah, no. I don't know. Can Earl really fit into my life acting like this?
I don't know the answer to that question, Shannon, but I do know that Earl is way better for you than John Jansen and certainly than David Bador. I think that he treats you very sweetly, and I think you guys are super cute together. So I can't wait to see what happens, because then we see Shannon chatting with Theo and Giselle's sitting there. But they're having a pretty involved conversation, Shannon and Theo. And then Theo points out that Shannon keeps peppering him with compliments. So does Theo think that Shannon is flirting with him? Did you guys think that Shannon was flirting with Theo? I kind of picked up on a little bit of something. Well, we see Ashley in her gold bombshell bathing suit. That girl's got a rockin' body. Well, she comes out and she models for Ralph, and he faints the heart attack and grabs onto his chest and he says, "Oh, Elizabeth." Who remembers that reference? It's from Sanford and Son, and it's what Fred used to say. He used to say, "Oh, I'm coming, Elizabeth," and he'd grab his chest. And if you don't know who Sanford and Son or what Sanford and Son is, then Google it. Red Fox was an amazing, amazing actor back in the day, before my time, honestly, but still pretty damn good. And anyway, do we think Ashley got the reference? I don't. She tells us, though, that they're in similar places in life and that he gives her the butterflies. So they're having a really good time on this date. Then Giselle has a chat with Earl, and they talk about his relationship with Shannon. And, Giselle asks if he's ready for it, because she says Giselle is a very fancy lady. And he says he's never dated anybody that's fancy. So they both seem to have the same concerns, but obviously on opposite sides. And I don't know, maybe this is a case of yin and yang and they make a perfect couple, but again, we'll have to see. Well, Mark and Luann are definitely showing some physical chemistry. They are all over one another, and it's just what Luann loves. She loves men falling all over themselves for her, and, we'll see. Ashley immediately invites Wale back to her room, and then we see James is just kissing Luann like she's his property. And then he asked Luann, he asked Luann if she had a good time on the date. And when she says yes, he just can't accept it. And he starts to act like somewhat of a jerk, and it's not very attractive to Luann. You could tell that she's starting to get a sour taste in her mouth for him. Well, back in the room, Ashley and Wale are talking about day-to-day life, and he's describing a typical day. And she tells us that she could picture a life with him and where her children fit into it as well. Wow, that's really odd. I'm getting mixed signals from Ashley, so I can only imagine what poor Wale and Ralph are going through. So James and Ashley start talking about how James already considers Luann his girlfriend. Okay, I can't with this. Everybody at the table is blown away, and Ashley says, "How many days has it been?" Or maybe, yeah. And because everybody knows that it's only been a few days, how can you actually be in love with somebody? They find it really weird. Joel announces a special surprise, and it turns out that he invited the BFFs to join and help the girls make some decisions. So for Luann, there's the fabulous Cynthia Bailey from Real Housewives of Atlanta. And then Shannon's daughters, Sophie and Adeline, are there. Ashley best friend Brant shows up for her. And Giselle has her friend Kel, who shows up for her. Well, Joel announces to everybody that they're going to have 2-on-1 dates. But the twist is that the best friends are going to choose who the girls will date, and they will also be going along on the date. So they have some time where they're all going to sit and chat. They call it an interrogation. It sounds kind of serious. So I don't know if I like that word, but Giselle asks both Phil and Theo to rank food, sex, and sleep in the order of which is most important. And my takeaway was that she definitely had more in common with Theo, but I don't know if Theo was just saying what he thought she wanted to hear. I'm still stuck on, I think Phil's better for her, except for, well, we'll see. So then Earl tells the girls, Sophie and Adeline, that he's from Lawrenceville, Georgia, and he'd love to open up a few geriatric daycares back where he's from, and that he kind of has a pretty simple life, and he's a very happy man. He has, season tickets to the Atlanta Falcons and so on and so forth, and the girls seem pretty charmed by him. Then Ashley plays a game of this or that with Ralph and Wale, and in this case, Ralph and her answers align more, in my opinion. While that's happening, we have Cynthia sitting with Mark, Luann, James, and Mitch. And Cynthia is asking pretty legitimate questions. And then out of the blue, you see James snuggled up next to Cynthia on the couch, interrupting. And he really pisses Luann off.
2 quick questions. Would you consider New York as a third place?
I would consider anywhere on the planet.
And do you think you can really love her?
Listen,
you can really love her the way she deserves to be loved?
Shut up? I'm going to move. Be a gentleman. I'm going to move over to Don't hang on my girlfriend the way you are, first of all. Okay. Compose yourself.
Okay, I'm
okay. Don't have your arm around Cynthia.
Okay.
She's not your girlfriend.
Okay.
She's mine.
But
don't forget it. Don't touch her.
I'm being kind.
Actually, don't touch her.
Okay.
I'm mad now.
Okay.
Don't touch my girlfriend. She's here to talk to the gentleman.
Okay.
And you're being rude.
Okay.
Ew. James gives me the heebie-jeebies. He is one of those love bombers, almost stalker-esque. I do not care for James. I hope Luann will put us out of our misery and let him go at the next elimination. So the interrogation is over. Joel brings the group back together, and it's time for the decisions. Cynthia chooses Mark, and Brant chooses Ralph for Ashley, and then Cal chooses Phil for Giselle, and Sophia and Adeline choose Earl for Shannon. No surprise there. Well, Brent, Ashley, and Ralph attend a mixology class. All of these classes look like a bunch of fun. I'd love to be at any of them. And I really enjoy when you're on a vacation and they have these little classes that kind of break up, the monotony, but aren't some big old excursion. So you could still kind of hang around at the resort and have a day at the pool, but do something extra. In this case, it was a mixology class. I love the little glasses they were drinking out of, the ones that had like the built-in straws and the 2 little glass feet. I actually paused the show and tried to find them online, and I couldn't. So if anybody out there has ever seen anything like that, please send me a DM or an email with where I could get them. I'd really like to have them. I thought that they were really cute. Well, as they're drinking, Ralph says, "Ooh, daddy like." And Ashley gets all hot and bothered by this. She is just overwhelmed by the comment. And honestly, she has some serious daddy issues. She finds that extremely sexy. To each his own. No hate, Ashley. On Giselle's date, they make tres leches cake and they're having a pretty benign conversation. It seems like Kel is trying to get to know Phil and whether or not he's really right for Giselle. And Giselle tells us that Kel's very, very protective. I don't know if Giselle likes Phil for Phil or Phil for Phil's clothing, sense of fashion, double R, Rolls Royce, Bel Air lifestyle. I hope not. I want to think that Giselle isn't that petty, but she's not hiding the fact that she wants to make sure that she's with a successful man. So I'm not sure, you guys. Super cute. Shannon and Earl are walking hand in hand next to Sophie and Adeline, heading to the guacamole making class that they are attending. And Shannon is immediately happy because she sees sombreros and she just loves the theme. Remember, I've told you that before. Well, Adeline really likes Earl and she thinks he's way different than any of the other guys. After they're making their guacamole, or actually as it's starting to come to an end, the hostess says that they have crickets. And Shannon and Sophie freak out, but Adeline and Earl are willing to try it. And Earl actually has a couple of them, and it kind of grosses the girls out. It was funny. Luann, Mark, and Cynthia have the best class of all, in my opinion. They are at a lobster and prawn paella class. I would have loved to have gone to that. Well, let's talk about Mark's knife skills. All they're asking is for him to cut an onion, and he's holding the onion in his palm with the knife facing his palm. So his knife skills are terrible, and of course, he ends up cutting himself. And Nurse Luann fixes him up, and then they head back to the class, and they finish the class pretty uneventfully. I don't learn a lot about Mark other than he has terrible cutting skills, and, well, I guess we'd be eating out a lot if Luann and Mark are going to end up together. Phil and Giselle have their cake, and Phil tells Kel that he used to have problems communicating. That's what I was talking about. It was a little bit weird. He said he used to be more controlling. And Giselle is telling us how they saw a fortune teller or what was it? A horoscope person. And he's an Aquarius, and they were told that that means that he's constantly changing, but it's for the better. And so Giselle raises her eyebrow at this and hopes that that's what he's referring to, because problems communicating and being more controlling is kind of what she had in her previous life as the pastor's wife, and she never wants to do that again. Phil says he's only going to open his heart up to someone he knows he can trust, and then they can share all of those things. So I really think this guy's a good guy, and maybe now is the time for him to find true love. Wouldn't it be cool if Giselle finally found someone and we got to see it play out on The Real Housewives of Atlanta? Adeline asked Earl if he had ever heard of Shannon as a housewife before. He says he'd heard of housewives. You kind of have to be under a rock. But he'd never heard of Shannon. He had no idea there was a Housewives of Orange County. He thought it was in Florida. And then he asks if she expects him to watch every show. And Shannon says she kind of would want that because it's really hard watching back and she'd want him to understand it. And he says it would be really hard to watch her be affected. It's really cute. It's really touching. Listen.
To watch pieces that are hurting you, it would be hard for me to watch it.
Aw.
I would like to see her crying.
Earl has no idea what he would be getting into. I mean, yeah, the Real Housewives of Orange County is a large part of my life.
I don't know how I would handle that.
I need to figure out whether I can date a simple man, because my life is not simple.
Over the paella, Cynthia asked Mark if he would ever want to get married again. And Mark kind of avoids the question. I think he says something like, I don't really see a need for it. And then they start talking about the age of the women that Mark had either been married to or dated. And he avoids it because it turned out he's never dated anybody Luann's age. And he says that he's really bad at math and he really likes Luann. So he's trying to avoid the conversation. And Luann wants more than what Mark is bringing. Cynthia's sitting there and she eventually tells them very candidly and very bravely, if you ask me, that she doesn't see it between the two of them. She says, I don't know if the two of you are amazing together. Really honest. I appreciated that. So over the cocktails, Ashley asks Ralph if he sees them melding their lives together or just sort of combining their lives and continuing to keep their own lives separate. And he says he thinks they would definitely try to meld, but he lives in Tennessee and Ashley's having doubts that she could be happy there. I don't know about this. Ashley seems very, very confused. Well, Brent then asks Ralph what someone would say is a bit of a concern that has dated him. And he says, well, maybe that I'm impatient. But then he says, hold on, let me qualify that. And he explains to us that at a very late age in life, he researched ADHD, OCD, and dyslexia and thought, damn, that's me. Eventually, he was diagnosed, so he's now working on these things late in life, but that's why he may have been viewed as impatient. And he tells us, he's not a dumb man and he can read and he has tons of books, but he could never read a book because it looks like the alphabet threw up. Having had family who struggles with dyslexia and dyscalculia, which is the same thing only with regards to numbers, it's pretty sad because back in the day when the older generation had issues with dyslexia, they just considered them dumb or incorrigible, and there was no treatment and no accommodation for these people. So we have a whole group of adults that are roaming around in this world who cannot read and who it looks like the alphabet threw up on a piece of paper when they try to. And the same thing about numbers for some. So I really am glad that we are aware of it now. And I really hope that we continue to remove the shame from it. But it really took a lot of vulnerability for Ralph to share this. And Ashley agreed with me. She thought it was super vulnerable and candid. And she found it super attractive and sexy and really appreciated it. So after the date, Ashley immediately reconnects with Wale. And they talk about the accents. I don't know. They're compared to the conversation that had just taken place with Ralph and how deep and meaningful and, I don't know, adult that was. This conversation seems juvenile and silly to me. And Ashley realizes she's going to have to pick one of these guys eventually. I wish I was in her mind and I knew what she was thinking, because for me, it's a no-brainer. If you want a adult and intellectual, stable relationship with someone who adores you, then pick Ralph. And if you want to have a light conversation with a lot of conflict and someone who is constantly challenging you, then it's easy. Pick Wale. I'm not sure where it's going to end up, but we'll see. So we then see the whole group mingling, and James tells Shannon and everybody in the group that Leanne makes him laugh, and that's why he fell in love with her. Are you kidding me? The whole group is taken aback and kind of ribs him about falling in love with the girl so quickly. And they think that Luann needs to take her time. Everybody does.
Sound mind saying I'm in love and I have a girlfriend in a few days?
No, it's not.
It's a little kooky.
What's a little red flaggish?
I think it looks like it's the next morning, and the BFFs are all getting ready to leave. And it's the most touching little scene. Earl shows up in Shannon's room and brings the girls little trinkets from the gift shop, just as kind of a gesture and something to remember the occasion by. And Shannon thinks it's adorable. Her only concern is that anything that she may say that might be construed as negative would be offensive to Earl, and that might cause problems for them. She says she really cares about him, though, so I hope these two work out. I really am crossing my fingers. I want Shannon to find love. So that was the wrap up for Shannon, and then the girls leave. And before Brent leaves, he and Ashley are chatting, and he thinks that Ralph is very self-aware. Ashley very much agrees, and she says she finds it very, very sexy. And to me, it seems like Brent is giving the stamp of approval for Ralph. I don't know. Well, Joel brings the group together and announces that the next elimination will be right now. Then he announces it's just a joke, and he was just kidding. He tells us there's only 3 days left, though, and so not to waste any more time. And we're left on a little cliffhanger, so we'll just have to wait and see. But next week looks like things start to really get shaken up. We see Shannon in tears in the preview. We see Mitch, I think it is, threatening to punch James. It's going to be really good. I'm excited to see how this comes to a conclusion. And if there are relationships that have, survived past the show, they're doing a really good job of keeping them under wraps because I haven't heard any spoilers. So that gets us all caught up on Love Hotel. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. We are going to be kicking off a little mini series, if you will, at the end of our Tuesday podcast. And it is all about finances and budgeting. So for the next, 2 or 3 weeks, I'll be giving you guys some tips. If you're a young family just starting off, a new couple, a single person who's just trying to make ends meet, or even if you don't have money problems or live paycheck to paycheck and you just don't know where your money's going, or you want to have a better idea of how to save for beautiful vacations, or maybe you want to buy an investment property. So it's pretty simple. It all comes down to budgeting, and I'm going to give you the first 3 of 7 steps to work on, and then I'll come back next week and we'll keep working on this until we get through all 7 of the steps. And by the time we're done, if you follow along, you'll have yourself a pretty nice budget. You'll know where your money is going. You'll know what things you can do to tighten up the budget and what areas you have a little bit of room to wiggle around and maybe do some of the things that you didn't know you could do because you have no idea where your money's going. So let's get into it. The finance tip I have for today is just guess where your money's going. It's simple. Sit down with either a paper and pencil or in front of a computer and just take 5 minutes to write down how much you think you're spending each month on things like rent or mortgage, food, utilities, entertainment, clothes, transportation. Now make sure you don't look any of this up. That's the key for this step. Just ballpark it and then jot it down and see what you come up with. Step 2 is you add in your income. On the same document, note all of your incoming money for the month, and that's after tax income, the money that's deposited into your account, whether it's direct deposit from your job or however your money comes in. And if you're among those whose income fluctuates month to month, then you kind of have to find an average. And the best way is to look at a 6-month average. You go home over the last 6 months worth of income, divide it by 6, and then you use that as your average. Honestly, you could get away with doing a 3-month average. So go back 3 months, add all 3 months income together, divide by 3, and that would be your average. And then for this week, the last step is tracking your spending. So we're at the beginning of the month. Today, as I record this, it's June 3rd. So technically you can go back over the last 30 days, meaning the month of May, and you can track all your spending. You can review all of your documents. You can check all of your receipts, look at any recurring payments and auto debits you have coming out of your account. Or you can begin to do it now in the month of June and just kind of start saving everything and tracking everything as we go forward. And then at the end of June, you'll have your answers. Either way, but you want to make sure that you get all of the information together. And if you are doing it for May, probably one of the easiest ways would be to go back and just get your bank statement and sit down with some highlighters. And if you're doing it on paper, then maybe color coding. But we are going to be posting a super budget worksheet that you will be able to track where every dollar was spent. And that will help you get to the budget that you're trying to get to. So if that's something of interest to you, we will be posting that on our Instagram, and I will try to come back and add it to the show notes a little bit later in the week, but you have a little bit of time because you still have to do steps 1 and 2. I'll be back next week to finish steps 4 and 5 and ask how things are going. If you guys have any questions or you want to send in any examples and you want some help, I'm happy to do that. You can DM me at my Instagram, or of course, you could always send us an email. I hope you enjoyed this friendly little budget/finance tip. I hope you'll come along with us on our little series to get your budget back on track. We still have 6 months left to the year, and a lot of people had made the mistake when the tax change occurred a few years back that they didn't change their deductions, and as a result, hundreds of thousands of people were left owing the IRS over the last few years. So we will also have an opportunity at the end of this budget/finance to teach you how to check your deductions and make sure that you have enough coming out so that you don't get a huge surprise at the end of the year. There's 6 months left. You would have to adjust your income and maybe take home a little bit less money, but it's way better than finding out you owe thousands of dollars at the end of the year and then having to spend all of next year getting back on track and paying that back. You guys, I had a lot of fun today. I hope you enjoyed the episode and you are having fun listening. I'm really having a good time bringing all of this to you. I have a very busy week, so I'm going to run. I'll talk to you all about what I did on Friday. And for now, just make it a great day.